Hey guys, welcome back for the review of the absolutely massive Nilson Works Monument EX kit here. We've got it all built up. Built this up over the course of 2 live streams over on the USA Gundam TV channel. Check that out if you missed it. If you missed the unboxing video for this, you can go back and check that out as well. Mostly it's the same kit, but obviously we have a bunch of new parts for the wings and the weapons. That's what's going to be mostly new on this kit, and those new parts are really nice. They're not just like throwaway extra parts that are just added on. They're actually really nicely engineered, and that's what we're going to focus on for this review. Less so much like the main body, because that's pretty much unchanged from the original kit. So if you do want to see more about just like kind of more of the gimmicks and articulation points of the main body, you can go back and check out my review of the original Monument when that came out. But this thing is absolutely massive here, as you can see, and then even with all that stuff on it, it is actually able to stand on its own without any issue, really. I suppose it probably depends on the pose that you have it in, but most of the weight is settled to the sides rather than to the front or the back, so you won't really have much issue if you just want to have this standing on its own. That said, of course, we do have the included stand. We'll go through all the accessories here in just a minute, although there's not really a whole lot in terms of like extra accessories. Most of what you're going to get with this kit, you can see on it right now, with the main weapons being there attached onto the shoulder, the main weapon, I guess, and the shield. But then, of course, the other main feature is just going to be those awesome wings, and they are really nice. We'll talk plenty more about those, but let's first go ahead and run through the accessories that we got. First of all, a couple of the leftover and extra parts. You do have all the parts to make the original head crest, so you can use that if you prefer. They're in like gray and yellow. You do not have the parts of the original weapon or the backpack, so you don't really get any of that. There are a couple of instances of parts being available to you in multiple colors. I just went off of the colors of how it is in the manual, but like on those parts on the side of the hip, if you wanted those in that kind of beige color instead, you can do that. Also, that gray part here at the center of the crotch, you have that in beige as well. Up there in the face, that gray part there, you have that also available in beige. And then for that center part, like the cockpit hatch there, you have that either in beige. You also have this in that kind of yellow-orange color too, if you want. So 3 different options basically for that one. And then for that beige part, like at the top of the chest right there, you have that available in gray if you want, but it would just be the same gray as the part right below it. And around on the back of the head there, those beige parts, you have those in gray as well. So other than that, for our hand option parts, we're going to have a set of closed fists, and the hands are just going to be swappable. We're also going to have a set of open expressive hands where the fingers are just locked in that position. It's just a fixed part, but the thumb is on a ball joint here, so you could have it a bit more like that or like that, just kind of depending on how you want it. You're going to have hollow gaps there on the inside of the fingers, but otherwise, I mean, those open hands do look pretty nice. And then we've also got a set of weapon holding hands here as well, which we're obviously going to use for holding on to our weapons, which are mounted to the shoulders, except for the beam saber handles, which are just mounted here on the back side of the shield, so you can just pull out the beam saber handle. And then we've got our 2 effect parts for that. With the effect part in place, it's going to be very long, and you're going to want to be very careful with how thin that is on the end. The overall length of this with the effect part comes out to about 29.5 centimeters, so almost 30 centimeters in total length. Compared to the height of the kit itself there, it's coming up to about its eye level, so rather long beam saber effect parts. And then we also have the effect part, which is going to fit in the cannon, so I'll show that to you more here in just a second. We'll kind of break the kit down a bit to show you each of the individual new sections, but this part just slots in basically between the rails and looks really cool. We'll see that more in a moment. And then the heat whip, which is made up of 16 sections here, plus the tip, which is in the shield there at the moment. Well, again, I'll show you this in use in a minute, but you're kind of seeing the main issue with this is that these don't really have a system of like staying in line with each other, which is kind of unfortunate. So there's a wire running through the middle, which allows us to kind of change the shape of this pretty nicely, but they don't like lock into each other in any way. So that is going to be a bit of an issue, I think, for this. It is unfortunate because this is a really cool aspect of the build, but let's go ahead and quickly review the base here again as well before we move on to the new sections of the kit. So the base is the same as what we've seen before. You do have this part here, which you can pop out. There you go, that part in the center, and then that will allow you to basically adjust the angle of the arm up or down slightly, that angle, and then you can just push that back in to lock it into place. This is going to plug up underneath the backside of the hip section, and it's definitely very hefty and should hold the kit up without much issue, as we saw with the first iteration. Now I'll get into the side mounted accessories here. Now I just want to point out the connection arm that connects this to the shoulder Has a really cool bit here where there's like a little peg and hole that plugs into to kind of lock this into place, so that even when all the weight is on this connection arm and you're not actually having this held in the hand as well, the connection arm is solid enough that it stays in place. It's not gonna be like weighted down by the heaviness of the weapon, but this connection arm has a number of different connection points, or articulation points, I guess I should say, that will allow that to move around with the gun connected. And this is going to be basically the same for both sides. That's a new part, and then this part here on the top is also a new part here on the shoulder. And so the length when it's not extended is coming in at about 34 centimeters, so it is very tall. But then of course here at the end, those will slide out, and then you can slide these open at the top and bottom for the full length of that, which from tip to tip now comes out to be about 46 centimeters in total length. So it is going to be rather long. I do really like how this clear part looks here at the end. Otherwise, basically you just have the handle here. The handle will move back and forth a little bit, and that's going to be about the extent of that. This whole section doesn't move or anything, so it's all pretty much just fixed. And then as I mentioned, the effect part's just basically a matter of just kind of like sliding this into place, closing that up around it, and there you can see how that's going to look with the effect in place. I do really like the look of that. I think it's like simple enough without being too crazy. I do like this rather than like a solid piece. Something like I think I've seen, I don't remember if it was a Bandai one or not, that had just basically like a solid clear piece that had like a bunch more like electric looking effect to it. But I think this one is really, really nice how that ultimately looks in there. So that's gonna be really cool. Once you close this up and push the rails back in, they're gonna act as a locking mechanism. You can see this part here at the back. Once those are pushed in, you cannot open this, so it's going to be fixed closed like that. So if you're like me and you're like trying to open it up and wondering what's wrong with it, it's just because that these need to be slid out first, and then you can open that up there. So anyway, moving on to the shield, then you have those cool clear yellow bits there, and again here is the point which you can remove out of the end of there, and then that's just going to plug onto the end of the whip. The whip then goes in there in place of that. The two beam saber handles are plugged in here on the back, as I already just removed one to show that to you guys. You also have the handle here which will fold down when not in use. A lot of really nice detail here on the back side as well. And then on the front, like relatively simple just in terms of the number of parts. There aren't a ton of parts here, but they work really effectively and look really nice. Really like the look of the shield for this one. And again, as with any of like the really sharp tipped parts with this, you're just gonna wanna really be careful because that could very easily get damaged, bent, or broken off there, that sharp little tip. Let's go ahead and plug in the whip here. And then from the tip there to the base is gonna be about 40 centimeters long for this. And so again, yeah, the wire works pretty well. I think it's gonna have a problem like holding up its own weight just in terms of this not having like a fixed angle. So this is not going to be the easiest thing to pose, unfortunately. And then again, the problem is just going to be that these don't have a system for interlocking to each other. So unfortunately, this seems like it's going to be a really kind of tricky part of the kit to actually use. And what I would maybe recommend to you guys to do is maybe use a different wire from what's included with this. So this one, the wire is about 1 millimeter thick. And I think if you could get wire that's slightly larger, like 1.5 millimeter, and then you might have to, it might not fit then into the holes. You might have to drill the holes a bit, but just use a little bit larger gauge of wire, something that's that holds these parts on there tighter. Either that or gluing the parts together in a certain pose, but then you're gonna have the same issue of it just falling down because of the weight like that. I think a tighter wire in there might help with that as well. Otherwise, I mean, just depending on the pose, I mean, a lot of people oftentimes just kind of have it there, just kind of resting on the ground anyway. But so while it is a bit of a shame, I mean, still, I think there's still so much overwhelmingly positive about this that it doesn't bother me too much, but it is kind of a shame that this part wasn't handled a little bit better. For example, then the wing section. So the front wings we'll take a look at here first. And I was basically just expecting this to be essentially just like an upscaled version of the MG wing for Ka wings, but they're actually much more complex than that. And so from end to end, again, they're quite large, coming in at about 35 centimeters in length. As you can see, each one of these feather bits is on a joint there that those can move around, but then the extent of which that this spreads apart and opens up is pretty incredible. So you have this part here that opens up, this front part will open out like that. This section folds out, you can kind of splay that out more up there at the top like that. But then this section also breaks down into a couple of different segments. That opens one way, And you can see how this whole section opens up like that. They also have this like a tongue groove section that allows these to fit together tightly when closed up, so that you'll have like a closed all nice and flush. But when it's all spread out, it looks really incredible here. I mean, it looks like just like a huge opened up wing. I mean, like in like reality, I don't know, it probably doesn't really make sense for it to open up like this much, but it is still really impressive just as far as this goes, and it's like quite solid as well. Here, as you can see, I'm just gonna like shake it here, holding it from the small end, and it is really nicely put together. You do have a couple of screws in here too, just to kind of help hold everything together, but it is really, really nice. And then for the back wings, these are also different from what we've seen in other versions of these wings, basically, in that this top part opens up and you have this bit of wing in the middle there that becomes visible, and then the bottom part also opens out, and then these, when you pull them out, will kind of spread out those feathers on the inside to how that's going to look all opened up. And there's not like a spring-loaded gimmick like we've seen, like for example again with the wing Verka kit. It did have a gimmick that like when you lift up the wings, these like kind of open up automatically, sort of. So there's nothing quite like that, but just having to open and close these manually, not really that big of a deal. Found there is a bit of a trick to pushing these in. You kind of had to push them in at just the right angle, close that up, and then close this up to close the wing back up. And again, I think it looks really, really nice there. So those are our new sections. And then of course we do have a new crest here on the head. Again, you're going to want to just be really careful with these sharp points there. You have the two-tone yellow for the front of the crest and then the clear yellow for the larger part. And yeah, I just feel like you're gonna have to be very careful with that, especially with it being located right next to these big articulated arms for the front wings. You're going to run the risk of those getting caught up in each other and possibly breaking that. So just be really careful with that. You do also have a new part right here at the lower back, and it's very interesting. I can remove this back skirt part so you can see that a bit more. It basically could just kind of locks the ab articulation into place so that you're not gonna have the kit like leaning back because of the weight that it's got on its back now. So that's really nice, but you can actually fold this down, and that then kind of frees that up for you to then angle the ab crunch forward if you wanted to, like depending on the pose, but that keeps it like pretty well locked in place with this new part there added onto the back. So that's really pretty ingenious. Well, I've got this part off of there just as a refresher, not a new part, but this is just here at the back skirt. These parts open up, and then you have like the thruster bell inside there that pops out. Similarly here for these parts on the side of the leg, this part will slide down, and then that pops out the thruster underneath, and you can see the one like the vent there at the top as well. So that's like tucked up in there, but then when you pull this down, that extends that out. So the kit has a bunch of really cool gimmicks to it. But for now, let's just go ahead and take a look at this in a few different poses here. So overall, really impressed by this. I mean, it really could have been just kind of, recolored, and they basically just kind of upscaled parts from like the Master Grade Tallgeese 3 and Wing Gundam Zero EW, for example, for the wings, and kind of called it a day basically. But everything really just does seem to be kind of designed from the ground up. I mean, still it's definitely based on those designs, the Tallgeese 3 and the Tallgeese Flugel, but everything is designed in a way that it kind of takes all those elements and then makes them original in a different way. So like the wings work differently. They have like added elements to how the wings are broken up. The cannon is pretty straightforward, but I think the effect part looks great on that. The size and just the overall details and proportions of the cannon compared to the body. Again, that is something that could have been like too small or too big, but I think it's actually like really nice in terms of just the size. The shield as well looks great. As I mentioned, it's not really the most complex. It's only a handful of parts, but it looks fantastic, and that also keeps it from being like too heavy. It's still going to be pretty heavy. You're really not going to have too much in the way of weight issues with this kit, even though it's got some pretty big wings, pretty big weapons and accessories connected onto the shoulders there. But I mean, as you can see, still perfectly capable of doing all sorts of really awesome poses. And then of course you do have the base, which doesn't have a ton of articulation to the base. Basically you can kind of just change the angle of it, but that still gives you plenty of options for how you might want to display the kit. The kit is large. It's going to take up a lot of space in your display. The original kit already was big, with it basically just being like a PG, and then with the added wingspan on this one, it's going to be very big, but it's definitely going to command a lot of attention on the shelf, especially if you have those wings opened up and then like the cannon out in a firing position with the effect part and that and everything. I mean, this makes for a really impressive kit. So really happy with this version. I was kind of expecting them to maybe do like their take on a Tallgeese 2 or a Tallgeese 3, but I think going all the way to this one here with the EX, with the kind of mixing elements of the Tallgeese 3 and the Tallgeese Flugel there, it is kind of like an iteration of the ultimate form of the Tallgeese, sort of, and I think it looks awesome. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. I really like just kind of the general shapes and design of this kit. You know, that's one thing that people do complain about from time to time with a lot of these third-party kits, is like they don't like how they're like overly detailed or overly pointy or things like that, but this is one of those that I think is not like that. I think it has a really great look to it. All the different shapes and angles going on in the armor, especially in like the leg sections, I think look really nice. Kind of reminds me a bit of the Unicorn and Unicorn mode in that way, how it's like just like all one color with that solid white, but it's broken up really nicely just with all the shapes that's got going on there. And yeah, and then obviously the wings look great. So awesome kit, highly recommend it for you guys. Definitely check it out. If you already have the original Monument and you're thinking, oh, do I really want another one? I would say, I mean, this one is really nice. So in my personal opinion, I would say it's worth purchasing this one again. I think, you know, obviously the main kit's going to be the same, but this offers enough new and enough different from the original kit that I would say it's worth getting this one, even if you already have the original one. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Of course, if you are interested in purchasing the kit, if you haven't already pre-ordered, you can check out the link in the video description below. Right down there in the video description, you can find the link to USA Gundam Store where you can pre-order this at the moment. It should be here in about a month of the time when I'm releasing this video here for you guys. But that's it for the review. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a great day. See y'all later. Bye guys.